So, basically this was all the result of my wife not allowing me to display my black plastic frames at home during the COVID quarantine. When we were all
You kind of got yourself re-engaged into comics during COVID because
because everyone's at home, everyone's kind of like looking for something to do, and I had gotten into the Dark Knight, the Last Night on Earth series.
Wow.
And it rekindled my love of comic books. And so suddenly I found myself buying up all the ones that I had as a kid, because I collected comic books as when I was growing up. But then, when I hit like 16, I sold them all at a yard sale, like as too many of us do.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I'm rebuying all my favorite series, like the Spider-Man Blood Brothers storyline and, Secret Wars. And I'm trying to just rebuild my collection. And as I'm doing that, I'm running out of, storage space. And there were a few cool pieces I had come across that I wanted to display. And so I go to my wife and I'm like, hey, I want to put these up in the living room. Here's the frames. Because I had looked and really the options were, the plastic frames where I could take it locally, and it was really expensive to get them professionally framed. And so I said, well, let me put some up. And she said, no, they look cheap. Like I won't have those up. And so clearly my wife wears the pants in our relationship. And I was like, okay, well,
left with his tail.
So I left and I was like,
Awesome.
okay, I have to find another way around this versus getting in an argument. And so I went to Jen, who was working with her laser. And Jen, if you want to kind of.
So I had recently got a laser during COVID because, again, we were bored. I'm a crafty, creative kind of person, so I kind of had always wanted a laser. And it had been a handful of years that I really went down the path of I'm going to get a laser one day. And when COVID happened, I said, okay, well, I guess I'll get a laser now because, figure something out, learn something new, try a new hobby or whatnot. So I was actually working on a whole different type of product and product line. And then Dan, stormed into my office and said, hey, there's no good way to display or hang comics or books or graded books or raw books or anything like that look nice. Like this is what I have. And Sam said no. And so can we figure out a way so I can put these on my wall? And so handful of White Claws later, and we came up with the first kind of modern flex frame design. And we tweaked it a little bit here and there to get it just right. And, Dan was super excited and said, hey, I can sell these. Can we get these with UV protection? So, I sourced UV protective acrylic and kind of figured all of that, trial and error with a bunch of different types of woods, types of stains, colors, and that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and Jen undersells when she says she's a crafty person. She's the type of person that goes on those reality shows that does like the dream Halloween costumes or birthday party decorations or place settings, and really like any element of home decor or like making thing, like that show Making It is like Jen. I'm always like, you got to go on that show. And that's where I was like, her creative eye to be able to take the problem, not from like necessarily a comic book collector's perspective, but to go from an outside perspective. And, me just walking through, well, here's what I want to make sure, like the book can't be pressed. It can't be sandwiched, like you need depth to it. And I had, how could you do that?
You had a whole list of like requirements.
Yeah.
Said, okay, well, let me try this or let me try that. And it was just a bunch of trial and error.
But even right off the bat with the first prototype, I feel like Jen, it was like, here's how we're going to have this layered approach to it, of which I hadn't originally thought. I think my original pitch to you was something that like could go on the sides of it or something and like screw together, but was ugly, like when I even drew it up. And Jen said, no, here's how you take two-dimensional pieces and you create a recessed, acrylic layer to provide that depth. And as long as the width and length and everything else is accounted for, and while you're doing that, here's how the pieces could be interchangeable, right? And so it just organically spun into this thing, and let's post it to Instagram. And people started going, hey, we like that. Do you have this in different colors? And so we go, well, let's see how many people want that. And then more people would want that. And hey, that's great. We love this, but do you have other sizes? And so we go, okay, great. We just got to make it a little bit bigger and, go from there. And so based on just, people reaching out and enjoying the products as we rolled out with them. It allowed us to get into like other collectors markets, meet really cool artists and things like that, and connect with them, because a lot of people just like us were at home and went, well, let me start trying to sell my art for the first time and see what happens. And they would post to Instagram, and suddenly they would stumble into businesses and not, well, hey, now my fans are asking me, how do I display this? But I've cut it in a really weird size with the printer, and there's no, can you help? And because Jen with the laser, like, I have to stop her sometimes going, Jen, we don't need to do this, but she's like, no, but I can, and she would literally create something within a day. And, people would just, again, kind of fall in love with that, the aesthetic to it, and allowing people to make it their own. That was big for us, because, just as much as Jen makes everything her own, no like cookie cutter store-bought stuff, it's, we wanted people to paint them and to do different things with them and interpret them in different ways to make them, unique. It's not about us slapping our logo or brand on it and people knowing it's ours. Right. It's more about the collectors making it theirs, and by extension, like we had talked about when Michael, when we first connected, was that the nerd initiative. I don't know, for us, our nerd initiative is like that sense of community. And we're not a framing company, we're not a grading company, we're a collector's company that's just built up based on people's feedback and asks, and good and bad, and everything in between.
And you guys seem like two sides of the same coin, because you were talking about like, oh, I can sell this, and she's got the creative side, which is really interesting. What are your backgrounds, and how did you guys connect and meet? Because it seems like, obviously, you said in your story, like, he barged in my office. You guys obviously were close and had a close working relationship and a good relationship there. That I feel like there's a backstory there, and you guys really have the components of running a business, which is really interesting as well too. And it always takes, a combination of the right components to do something. Yeah.
So I own a medical device. We used to be a medical device manufacturing company. We now import, so we're a sales company for a specific piece of dermatology equipment. Okay. Dan actually knew my husband prior to me. He worked with my husband for a year in IT. Dan was the sales and marketing director in that business. I kind of stole him from my husband. And so Dan started working for the medical device company, and, it's been a handful of years, and that's kind of, Dan came on full time in February 2020.
Right before.
So February 2020. So we had been working together for about a year prior. And then February 2020, he came on basically full time around that time. And that's when we started, COVID shut everything down, and we said, okay, well, what can we do in between? And, kind of just trying to keep ourselves busy and figure something else out. And then, I had no intention of getting into the comic book collecting world at all. I've actually never read a comic book in my life.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
I know nothing about, I've seen some of the superhero movies. I've seen some.
But see, that's why it's great. That's why I send them out to get the signatures and the artwork with people, because they treat, everyone, no matter how big, just as normal people. And I think that's too what gets lost a lot is that artists are people, these creators are people. They just want to be treated like people. So whether it's Jen and, some of the girls on the team at shows, or myself on Instagram talking to people, like whether it's Peach or Patrick Gleason, Scotty Young's team, like there's so many different artists that now have our frames in their offices, and I just talk to them about their art, and I ask questions, but I treat them like people. Going to this one, right, the one that I brought today. So
I gotta hear the story behind this.
Yeah, so my Spider-Man sketch. This I picked up at a comic book shop a few years ago. They had lost the COA, so they didn't know who did it. So I picked it up for like $15 just because I thought it was cool. Yeah. So I just thought it was cool, so I bought it. And the other day, I was like, I want to slab this one, because I had it aside and I just came across it, right? Because we all have too many things now. And I did a video, and I said, hey, can you guys help me out? Like, I'm looking for, does anyone know anything about this artist? Like, there's two signatures. Like, one, I'm pretty sure is Humberto Ramos. Like, I looked up examples, I think, but I don't know.
Oh, wow.
But the art doesn't look like him, everyone. So, like, can you help me? There's another signature down here that I don't recognize. Does anyone recognize this? Within an hour, people had knew who it was. They're like, oh, I think that's so-and-so. And I connected and
With the artist.
And sure enough, he's, not only did the art, but he lives locally.
Oh, yeah.
So it's Tom Hodges, the
Oh,
artist.
wow.
So he lives maybe 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, small world. So I start messaging him on Instagram, and I'm looking at his Instagram and I'm noticing all these Phillies things. And I'm like, oh, I'm a huge Philadelphia fan. I reach out to, hey, talk Phillies, we're talking sports. He grew up there, right? And so now suddenly I'm messaging him over the weekend when I'm at Legoland, like with my family in line, watching updates of the Phillies game on my phone. I'm like messaging him, going, oh yeah, did you see that? Go Phils. Getting a new commission from him and stuff, because LA Con is actually going to be his last convention too.
Okay.
But I mean, the whole thing from start to finish, the reason I wanted to bring it to you, because I thought it was like a perfect example of like, number one, it's about the art, right? So I got it not because it was from someone famous or signed by someone famous. I just got it because I liked it. That was the value that it had to me, right? And then second, the power of just this community of when you can get people involved and when it's more positive focused and it's not like clickbait and negative and things like that, right? You just help people. It's everyone can contribute. And that's why we call ourselves a collector's company, because we always want everyone to feel like they can contribute their feedback, their ideas. What do you want to see? And we want everyone to feel like this is a whole revolution that they're part of, right? Not just a product. It's about experiences. And then to me, I get to reach out part 3 to the artist. And, he's even asking me,
locally.
Yeah, who's locally. I'm going to probably meet up to watch the World Series game with him now that the Phillies are in the series. But when he's asking me like, well, what do you want? The commission. And I'm like, honestly, anything you make will be cool, because now it's just part of this whole story. And to me,
exactly.
Us getting to chat in Instagram, regardless of what I end up with, is just part of the whole thing. And so now, what Jen has helped create with this whole now displayability, it helps people share that experience. It makes the experience more visible and accessible. And I can't tell you how many, people have messaged us and talked about displaying their stuff on like their desk at work, and coworkers ask them about it. And it gets you to now share something that you're passionate about, but not in a way that like, if it makes other people feel alienated or anything like that. And yeah.
I mean, so you mentioned it last time, and you mentioned it this time too. I think there's a really good story and a really good perspective there with connecting with this artist. But you mentioned Peach, you mentioned Pat Gleason too. I think I'd love to hear about that experience, because I do think there's a lesson there. And if people like, the more that social media has kind of taken over the world, I think people have lost that human aspect, but also just that ability to kind of reach out to someone. You mentioned treating them like people, but you obviously have a very good knack and ability to connect with people and build relationships. I think that's incredible and amazing and kind of like ingrained in what you guys do. I'd love to, was there ever a second thought when you started doing this of like reaching out to all these different people? Because I think that it's something a lot of people can learn from as well, is that like, if you're going in there with the right perspective, and you're going to get some denials too. It's like anything else.
Thanks.
Dan was born that way.
Yeah, I probably get it from my father. Yeah, they always said, and like bringing me to New York, I would go and start performing with like the magicians and things down there, like the street performers. I liked interacting with people and doing things. So, but for the Instagram, it was really just organic, like just posting pictures of stuff that I liked. And as Jen has always reminded me, it's not about the product and the details and what it is. It's like why it is, right? And a lot of posts, you don't see people talking about the art, right? It's more about the spec or like the first appearance. And I was just like, let's talk about this cool thing. Here's how I like how these colors work together, right? And I would just tag the artists in it.
It's more about the feeling than the product.
Yes, how does it make you feel? 100%. And it's like they would then sometimes after a while, because I have favorite artists and I post their stuff a lot, after a while they'd comment or maybe they'd message me, right? And Scotty was one of the first artists, and it was funny because they just ordered our frames and they messaged me and I was like, oh, hey, can't wait to see what you display, like, and pick up anything cool lately. because it was
'Cause you
through
didn't know
their stupid
their-
freshness, their shop and I didn't recognize, like, and they're like, yeah, I think I know a few, like, winky face. And I looked into it and I went, oh.
Sam's office.
And so suddenly I was like, oh, number one, huge fan, because like I post your stuff a lot. And so I started talking to their team over there. And then they would send me videos and photos of their office wall. And they've, they got a bunch of them. And so I was like, this is amazing. And then from there, it was like Peach and Patrick were the same thing. I was just posting a lot of their stuff. They would comment. And after a while, I'd say, hey, by the way, I'm such a big fan of your work. Like, I'd be happy to send you a frame, like just for your personal collection. You don't even have to post it. Like, I'm just a fan. And then they'd get it. They'd love it. Especially Peach was like, there's nothing like this over here in Japan. I wish we had more of this, because obviously it took a while to get to her internationally. But, she was nice enough to post a picture, and her work is just, I feel like, exemplifies the whole comics artwork. Like, I can't even pick a favorite from all the Demon Days ones alone that she's done, let alone all the other stuff. And I think that's, when I talk to them, I would just I asked Patrick Gleason, what was the inspiration behind that 55 cover? Like, maybe you've never been asked this before, but like, how did you think of it? And his answer was just, oh, I thought it was, when I first got, the Spider-Man assignment, I thought it was obvious that someone must have done a Spider-Man made of spider webs, right? Like, that's obvious. And when he saw that someone hadn't done it, almost like the glory of any invention, right, is the necessity of it. He goes, let me create this in that 55 cover, which he tells me he had pitched a couple of times and they kept pushing it back.
Really?
Becomes iconic. And then from that, again, that's a cover people will be talking about like decades from now. It's amazing. And just me getting to learn that story and getting to ask him and getting to just talk to people. But, I think, Jen has a great story from when we were at Amazing Con with Tyler Kirkham and his team and our team. I was busy working the booth, so I didn't get a chance to meet him for this part of the story, but.
Yeah, one of the girls, was I with her?
Yeah, it was Jessica and Allie.
Oh, so it was two of the other girls. They took a book to get signed by Tyler Kirkham. They gave him the wrong book, so we signed it. They came back and they go, so we got the books mixed up. This guy signed the wrong book. And so we laughed and we ended up going back. I ended up going back over later that day with another one of his. And I said, okay, well, employee of the month here, she gave you the wrong book to sign, but you were nice enough to sign it anyways. But here, can you sign your book?
Yeah, and they broke the ice by offering him a beer, which he accepted. So getting to, share a beer with one of your favorite artists, and then also end up with a book that is 100% unique.
Not his.
Many people have books signed by Tyler Kirkham. Not many people have books of DC Harley Quinn signed by Tyler Kirkham.
That's amazing.
But again, it's about the story, right? Because now when I brought that to my buddy Marcus to show him, he's like, what's this? Now I get to share the story behind it, and it's just so much more memorable, right? And it's all thanks to Jen and the girls, and just again them, treating people like people. Just, hey, sorry, we messed up. You want to split a beer?
Yeah.
But then it gets us talking to his team about, hey, maybe there's stuff that we could do together in the future, and that's where we're hoping to work with more artists and different teams of people to go, hey,
exclusive.
We're all the same mindset. We're all of like, let's do good. Let's put good out there. How can we use each other's resources and abilities, to move forward and to collaborate on different things, whether it's, just like you and us in this, or us and other, distribution and exclusives and doing cool things with the laser that, we're getting ready to come out with even, the next kind of iteration of some of our.
I was going to ask about that too. I was going to ask what's next, because and if you want to say, I know obviously a lot of people want.
Yeah, so we're hoping that we're gonna have it ready for LA Comic-Con. I know that, and so I'm gonna get you a sample like before that, Michael, awesome. so you can have one too. And I'm gonna get some details from you ahead of time of like specifically which book you would want to do it for like for some reason I can't totally explain, but like anyway.
Okay.
Well, you tell me which book. We'll figure it out, and we'll get something made up for you prior to that. But again, there's just in doing this, it was never about like us or trying to like take down a thing or to do anything. It was really just because we loved doing it and we loved working together and we loved making something. And even down to the logo, which I have on my phone here. It was actually originally the first draft was
Funny,
done
I
by.
have that on my phone. That's funny.
Okay, yeah, right on. But the first draft of our logo was done by one of our customers, who's now one of my good buddies. And then I took that logo to our office admin, who did this version, as you see here, which I fell in love with. And so it's always been a collaborative effort of like, well, let's just work together to build this. And that's why it's been so fun. And from there, I think it's just become this opportunity of, hey, we have something here. Now, how can we use the momentum to do more good and to like get it out there? Because again, there's so many people that are tired of, you know, getting pushed around and bad experiences and buying into this system where value is declared by someone you'll never meet, right? Versus who you trust and who you are, and you know, things like that. And so we just wanted to make this whole thing more fun and remind people what it was like collecting 20 years ago, prior to, you know, the people chasing grades, you know, buying books for the grade and not the book itself, and saying things like, well, it's this number, but it displays much better. And so I kept screenshotting things like that.
I've seen those. Oh, and someone's like,
all the time. Oh, here, it's this, but it's really this, guys, wink, wink. And I'm going, well, if everyone's doing this wink, wink kind of thing, then we're all acknowledging that there is the perceived value that we have all created out of nothing. And so if we can kind of go back,
and that never lasts either. That can never last either.
It can never last, because, you know, let's just remember why we collect things is because we like cool and weird things, and most of the time so that we can tell other people about it, right? And
yeah, it's about the story. It really is
about the story. And so that's where hopefully as we create more things and we grow this, you know, company into what I think it can be, you know, that's the future of what we're trying to build here.